In this tutorial, we will learn how to use the MIDI event list editor. First off, let's open the MIDI event list window under Window, MIDI event list. The MIDI event list shows one MIDI track's data. Right now we're looking at the piano track. Let's look at the drums track. Now this shows every MIDI instruction that's there. It could be notes, pitch bend, other controllers, damper pedal, MIDI volume and panning, all kinds of stuff. Let's first acquaint ourselves with the different columns and what kinds of data appears there. So if we look at some of these note events, there's a note event, you can hear it. The first column says where that event begins by bar, beat, and parts per quarter note. So this is bar 1, beat 1, right on the beat. It shows the note number. This is the note number on the keyboard, piano keyboard. This is the on velocity. The values here could range from 0 to 127. This is the release velocity, which is usually ignored by most synthesizers. And this is the duration, again in bars, beats, and parts per quarter note. We can look at this and say this note has a duration of 1/4 of a beat, because 240 is 1/4 of 960. If we go to some other events, here's a pitch bend event. Begins on bar 4, beat 1. We know that because it says pitch bend. And if we click here, we can see it can have low values or high values depending on where your pitch bend is going. This entry here could actually have a total of 16,384 values. That's 128 times 128. Here we have a MIDI volume event. It's at its maximum. This event can have a value of 0 to 127. So that's a little rundown of what is in each column. Now let's see the MIDI event list in action. As you heard, when I click on an event, we can actually hear that event if it's a note. And notice that in the editor, the MIDI editor and piano roll view, we see that event selected. So if we simply wanted to delete event, we could highlight it and press the backspace or delete key, and that event is gone from our session. If I wanted to edit the event, I could do this simultaneously in the event list and the MIDI editor if I wanted to. Let's say I wanted this event to have a quieter sound, a lower on velocity. I could simply type a lower number here, and now the on velocity for that note is soft. Notice the velocity stock here under that note that I selected. I'm going to do the same thing with that event. Watch the note on velocity stock change. So if I click on this note, make it 120 again, as soon as I press return, this on velocity stock jumps up. So they are one and the same. It's just a different way of looking at the instructions. You can change their duration if you want. Let's say you wanted to add a note. Let's say you wanted a quarter note also on beat 2. That's where we go to this little drop-down menu here on the event list, and we can do an insert. And you can insert all kinds of different events. So let's say I wanted to insert a note. Instead of re-recording the track, I can simply go Insert, Note. At the top of my event list, it's giving me a dialog to set up what I'm going to insert. I want it on 1. Let's say I want it on beat 2. I want the note to be the same note, C1. And let's say I wanted the same on velocity. I'll give it really high velocity, 127. And I press return and watch this spot down here. Now there's a note of very high velocity on beat 2. So that's a way you can insert notes. Now let's say you wanted to modify something. Let's say you liked having that note near beat 2, but you wanted it on the and of 2. In other words, halfway between beat 2 and beat 3. Don't re-record it, just fix it in the event list. I'll make it start location, not 1, 2, 0, 0, 0, but 1, beat 2, and parts per quarter note 480. Watch it in the piano roll editor. It just jumped later. Okay, so now my rhythm sounds like this. Okay, so it's very easy to move add and delete events in the event list. So let's say you had played this pattern. I'm going to shift these notes slightly, move them around a little bit out of time. Let me turn off the grid editor for a moment. And just kind of slide these guys around so they're not in time. Like that. Okay, as you can see in my MIDI event list, those notes are now no longer right on or in between a beat. I can tell by the note value here. So to fix that, again, don't re-record your session or your track, just fix it in the event list. I can type this in and say 480. Watch, the note will pop right back onto the grid. This one should have been on beat 3. It was a little late, so I'll just press 0. It pops right to the grid. Same with this one. 0. Pops right back to the grid.